That's the number one problem I'm hearing from our immediate problem, because in that continuum, there are multiple different challenges, but that's the number one that I'm hearing from my customer base. We just turn on these engines, now data is leaking out unintentionally.
Welcome back to another episode of Discovering Disruptions in Tech. I'm your host, Howard Holton. In this episode, I am with Navindra Yadav from Theom.
Thank you, Howard, for having me here.
Thanks for joining us. I don't know. We call Black Hat Hacker Summer Camp. What RSA needs a similar name, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Governance Summer Camp.
Probably.
Governance Spring Break, right? So tell the audience and us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Theom. We build data security and data governance products. It's the data operations center that we've gone and built, and we're now morphing it towards AI operations centers. So we can chat about this.
Ooh, that's such a big topic when you think about data governance, data security. I always kind of shake my head, because if you I don't know how far you go back in the industry. I go back a long time in the industry, and I remember buying like 600 megabyte hard drives, one gigabyte hard drives, like these real small. I was super thrilled the first time I got a 4 gigabyte hard drive, and that meant at some point, like, our company's entire data set fit on an array of 4 gigabyte hard drives. These were small numbers, way less than a terabyte, and now we're looking at petabytes and exabytes.
Yep.
How much easier would life be if we had learned to properly govern things back when it all fit on, effectively, a CD-ROM?
Very, very easy and simple, because all you would need to do is get your intent. This is what I need to do with my data. This is what it can be used for, and so on and so forth, and life would have been very simple. Alas, that hasn't happened.
Did any company actually do that? Because
I don't think so.
Right,
I don't think so.
You remember EIM?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
At that time, if you brought up EIM after like it was new and hot and buzzworthy.
Yep.
If you brought up EIM, you just had to put your resume back out there. That was a resume generating event, right? It was like, where did that hook come from? Why am I being drug out of the building?
100%. Yes.
And yet now we're in a situation where if you didn't get that figured out, if you don't have your data quality and your data governance and your data security figured out,
you can't really enable AI.
I mean, you can.
The risks just compound.
Right, but it goes from AI to AR, right?
Yes.
Artificial intelligence to automatic risk.
Yes.
Right. So if you're any company now, because really nobody solved EIM back in the day.
Right.
So every company kind of faces this challenge. So if you're any company right now, and you're being pressured to turn on AI, and you're being pressured to remain competitive, right? And if AI is the big force multiplier, then you have to have it to be competitive. Where can you start today to provide some governance and security and risk reduction and enable AI at the same time?
Great question and great points. I think first I'll start with what we typically see in the customer base and so on and so forth. So on one side, you have these large regulated companies. They have tons and tons of different types of data systems, things. So they've got starting from on-prem systems, classical relational databases, filers. In the cloud, they have things like S3 buckets and blob stores and things like that, going all the way towards warehouses, data lakes, and really sophisticated systems. So they've got a whole plethora of things. Their first challenge is usually, give me the real estate of my. They don't know what all is there. I know it sounds very cheesy, but that's
it's
really,
not cheesy at all,
really.
Because if you knew everything you have, you wouldn't have any shadow IT.
Exactly.
Show me an organization that doesn't have shadow IT.
Exactly. The thing. So first thing is get an inventory, and it's always keep it always running, so that, because it's not a point in time, the systems need to discover this whole thing. Then figure out what's there in each one of these patches, because data often gets copied around. Then take it from there into the next step is, okay, who's using this data? What are they using it for? That's the next level. Right. Once you get that under control, then you bring along the AI systems, because eventually AI is also for some use. And if these companies have to run, and what I often hear from my customers and speaking to other people is, trust is the most important thing that they have with their customers.
Right.
So, and they've collected data about their own customers, how that data is being used, and so on and so forth. So AI just is a means to an end to increase the productivity of the company, generate new revenue streams, reduce costs, whatever the thing is. So it's a tool for a business purpose or a process or things, but use it in a governed way, secure way, and so on and so forth. So the first thing is just figure out the inventory. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation, which we see, is the more unicorns or the startups. They tend to have better control in a way because they didn't have legacy systems to worry about. So because they're younger and so on and so forth, things. But again, in those unicorns, there's a wide variety. Some unicorns which did not build tech debt, they have more things under control because they've got fewer data systems.
Sure.
The ones that grow rapidly without the amount of governance things, they have things. And between them, they're trying to figure out, how do I control AI when AI systems ask questions or drive different agentic workflows? We can go into that. Agent is doing something on behalf of some user. Because at the end of the day, that's the user. So using his or her permissions, they only should do those actions. They can't, and that's a big challenge in this whole industry. I don't think anyone has actually figured that out. And so,
well, it might be impossible to really figure out,
yes.
right? I mean, the reality is, if you don't really know what all the data is, right? I mean, we've all seen stories of people turning on Copilot.
Yes.
And having users ask questions of Copilot, and Copilot returns results that, of course, they should not have access to.
Yes.
But kind of, I was talking to somebody this morning, kind of to his point, right? So we've used security through obscurity on a lot of our filers.
Yes.
Right? You have access to a ton of data you don't even know you have access to because we just turned it on. And since you didn't know where something was stored, it was impossible to find it. Until you turn on AI,
and indexing
all of a sudden
happens.
It's part of the graph, right?
Yes,
all of a sudden it's just there.
That's the number one problem I'm hearing from our immediate problem, because in that continuum there are multiple different challenges, but that's the number one that I'm hearing from my customer base. We just turn on these engines, now people are getting, data is leaking out unintentionally because it was security by obscurity, or the permissions were not granularly set up based on who's asking the questions. So I'll give you an example of fictitious customer thing. They say hypothetically there's an airline that turns on this, and I am a customer of that airline, and I say, this is my ticket, tell me about the engine maintenance history of the plane I'm going to be flying on. So I should get a sterile answer from that bot or whatever. Whereas if I'm an employee of that company, I work in the engine maintenance department, and I ask the same question, this is the airplane, tell me about the engine maintenance history, tell me about the metallurgy of the fan blades and the compressor blades. And
sure.
I need... how do you now separate all of this for these AI systems? Either you start segregating, creating different AI systems that go, but then you're replicating data, you're replicating pipelines, you're replicating these LLMs and so on and so forth. They're expensive systems, things. Or you have to figure out this whole permissioning thing. But absolutely.
But you have to figure out the permissioning thing.
Oh, yes.
Like, period. Because otherwise, you open any of them to be jailbroken.
Yes.
Right? You open any of them to be worked around. And humans are chaos animals.
Yes.
And let's be honest, just playing with the public models, it's really fun to jailbreak them.
Yes.
Right? So you can't assume that your people aren't going to go, you know what would be really fun?
Right.
Let's see if I can mess with IT today.
IT, yes.
Right? Yeah. Like we all have that kind of, especially the people that you want. You want all of the people to have the most curiosity they can. Yes. And then at the same time, you're gonna set up a system and be surprised when they're curious. Seems weird.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's kind of funny. I worked for a company, we had a full text index application, so we'd go do demos for customers. I'm with a sales engineer, and we're at their customer, and he's doing a demo, and he's like, I'll just search for myself. I used to work here.
Yep.
Right? And they are highly regulated.
Yep.
And so he does a search for himself, not figuring he'd get anything. Maybe something as a customer or something.
Yep.
No. He got something from being an employee.
Yes.
That was sent to HR, that had his social security, his wife's social security, and his child's social security.
I'm not surprised.
Because it was after the child was born, and they had to get the kid covered on their insurance.
Right.
And all of that showed up, and his kid had just graduated college.
Wow.
And that's what the data was.
And
everybody in the room just went, ah. Like you could hear the record scratch. You know what I mean? As everybody just went, ah, crap. And he's going, ah.
Right. Wow.
I'm not. Delete. Back. Right?
Yep.
We're just simply, there's too much data for us to do this in any kind of manually.
Fashion, it has to be an automated system. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so So now we've kind of talked about, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to see everything, and then you need to be able to govern some things. And once you govern the things, then you can say, okay, we can use those things.
Yes.
All right. So what do we do? Like, what's a reasonable policy that we can create? What's a reasonable message we can create? How do we deal with that native curiosity of somebody just going, okay, cool, I hear you, but I'm not going to do that.
Right. So start with something relatively simple. Say simple, as in take SOC 2. If you need to be a SOC 2 compliant organization, if you need to be GDPR compliant, CCP, whatever is your regulated, your North Star of regulation, it may be a regulation from outside or maybe a business policy itself inside the company. Give it to some system, translate it into policy. That too can be translated really well. Use AI for that. Translate it into concrete rules. Think of these systems saying, people of this role should not be looking at this data, or even better, people of this role should be only looking at this data. And if you can start generating based on identity, some handles of identity, type of data, now that's all the set of rules that need to be enforced by the system. But this system, hypothetical system that we're talking about, should be able to work on the 5 Ws, which is what data is there, who has access to this data, and who would tie into identity, and then we'll figure out, okay, how do we actually come up with an AI system and drive that AI system, or maybe even a simple data system like a Snowflake or a Databricks or something like that. So the 5 Ws, when can it be accessed, from where can it be accessed, so all of these become the pillars, the 5 W. For what use case can it be? So I can probably search for this data, but for use case X, but not for use case Y. If you've got these 5 Ws lined out, your entire policy declaration can be built on top of this, and then it's based on, okay, whichever AI system comes along, even if you've got a graph of agents working on this data, let them actually put the right governance at the right places and then go from this. I would assume this would be something like an MCP server, if you're familiar with this model context protocol of things, inserting all these controls at those agentic workflows thing, and carrying the identity along. So you know this action is being done on whose behalf. Record all of this, because someday this company may get audited, or they may have to give details to their auditors, so they could actually say, these are our audit logs, and so forth. So you can prove that whatever is your policy, you are actually enforcing it. That's the kind of systems that need to come out. Does that exist today? No, that it doesn't exist, but I see the industry actually moving in that direction.
I tend to agree. I mean, the part of the problem, though, is when it's all said and done, you can't make a decision that requires data when the data that it requires does not exist.
That is correct.
Right? And so while you were talking, I've had this conversation multiple times at RSA this week.
Yes.
Because everybody kind of sees the writing on the wall. And we're at a security conference.
Yes.
And we're at a security conference that is the most focused on governance.
Yes.
Right? The rest of GRCS, not just the S, but the GR and the C, more than any other kind of big conference. So it's not surprising I've had this conversation. But while you were talking, what occurred to me is it's also a really good time to take a look at a sample account and go, I have all of this data that I fill out when I create an account. I need a policy that makes decisions based on these things. Does that data exist here, anywhere, right?
Yes.
And really start looking at, fundamentally, have I created accounts that have the data to answer the question that I need answered?
Yes.
If not, what is the data that I need to enrich on my accounts so that data exists, so I can then make the decisions and then think through, where do I get that from?
Exactly. So these accounts, that one way I can take this in this discussion is, what attributes do these accounts need? Do these attributes sit inside something like, let's say I'm a Microsoft shop, Active Directory shop. Do I have the right attributes there? Are there attributes about the person's location and things? Some may be static attributes, some may be more dynamic attributes. Right. All of this needs to flow in. If you're doing an attribute-based access control type of thing and you're bringing it into the AI land thing, do systems like this exist? As far as I'm aware, no. But that's really where the industry leader needs to go towards, and it has to happen fast. Otherwise, there'll be all sorts of.
The nice thing about Active Directory is it's just a database.
Yes.
Right. It
That's
has an
absolutely
API.
True. Yes.
Which means we can feed data in.
Exactly.
Right. So So the other, like as soon as you say no, because you're going to say no,
exactly.
you're going to say some of that data is missing. Is it up to date? Is it authoritative?
Yep.
Right. Because the first question is, does the data exist?
Yep.
The second question is it up to date?
Yep.
The third question should be, is it authoritative? If it's
Yes.
authoritative,
Yep.
well then by definition it's up to date.
Yes.
Even if
Yes.
it's not,
No.
even
Yes.
if you never changed it, it's technically up to date. But for most of this data, it's not authoritative.
Yes.
What's
Yes.
authoritative is the HR system.
Yes.
Right. When someone changes the team they're on, which happens
Yep.
at every organization.
Yes.
Right,
It
their
automatically
role's
should-
supposed to change.
Yes.
But HR definitely updates that.
It's that. Yes.
Right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Like HR
Yes.
will update that the
Yes.
second it happens.
Yes.
Active Directory doesn't. It's not
Yes.
actually necessary for them to log in.
Yes. Yes.
So then the question becomes, can you write an integration between
That's
your
where
HR
an agent
system?
can come in,
Correct.
which does all of this. So you
really-
can use AI for a lot of
of
this,
it.
but exactly between these two systems.
Right.
Yeah, go on. I didn't want to break
no,
your flow.
no, it's good. That's exactly what I was starting here, right?
Yes, connecting these different systems together, tracking all these attributes. By the way, I said Active Directory. It could be anything. It
Sure,
could also
sure.
be Okta or things, but
Sure,
it doesn't matter. But the point
80 is the
yes,
most popular,
one.
right?
Yes,
So-
exactly. The 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And if you can do it with 80, you can do it with absolutely any of
Yes,
them.
yes.
Right? But then now this is authoritative.
Authoritative,
Now you can start looking at how do I take tools and make sure that permissions are correct.
That's
If
correct.
you just did that
Yes.
triangle,
Yes.
you'd be so much further ahead of most organizations, right?
100%. Yes.
And it's a really good use of AI.
Exactly. And the next step would be, okay, now that I've got this triangle, the next triangle is, okay, what actions can people, different roles do on the data? Maybe it's just read. So actions could be, okay, retrieve this for what purpose? Things. So for these purposes, they could read this data. Maybe it needs to be aggregated and summarized in some cases. It could be, it shouldn't be like, okay, Navindra's salary is this. Maybe this person for this job, this function can only get average salaries and things like that rather than precise salaries. Things. So that side of the definition of what it can be used for, what purposes. Can updates be done? So even actions, so not just reads, maybe what type of writes can be. Can you send this information to another system? So let's say there's a sequence of agents that are being put together to come up with a more complex workflow where, and this is something that one of our customers actually was giving me this example of a hypothetical scenario. Like, let's say I'm going on this travel to the Bahamas or some islands. Tell me what all I need to pack, as well as go buy the right things from Amazon or things. So the example was sunscreen. So look at the weather in Bahamas, look at the weeks I'm going to be there. So now the system has to actually go look at my calendaring system, figure out, okay, when am I going to go on vacation, look at the flights, look at all of this information, then look at weather.com or something, a weather site, to figure out, okay, what's the sun going to be looking at, how much UV index, what are we talking about, then go to my prescription site to see, do I have any conditions that require a certain SPF level, and so on. So you can see how complicated this system starts becoming quickly. Then after that, it needs to know about my my Amazon account, so that it can order sunscreen for me. It needs to know where I stay, so it gets shipped to the right place, and so on and so forth. But if you see in this, there are some reads in various systems. In some cases, there's actually a purchase being done on my behalf, and so on and so forth. So whenever there's a complicated workflow with all these agents, now how much trust are you delegating between these systems? How is that whole thing? And now if you try to turn it around, this was more of a consumer level thing I was describing, but if you turn it into a business to business workflow, there's so many more things that come in. And imagine the security vulnerabilities there, because a lot of privileges have been granted to these systems. So when these systems access some data or try to do an action, is it really who are they doing this on behalf of? And so on. So this is going to be interesting times. The next couple of years or 5 years would be pretty interesting. But yeah, this also, whoever gets this right is a big business enabler, because they reduce their costs down. They can automate a lot of stuff and things. But customers are very classical enterprises, as we talked through them. All of them are like, okay, maybe we just do it for reads. We just enable their internal folks for getting information from inside their system. Like, it's more of crawl the information and get it. Even there, the exact use cases that you brought up are there. Like, security obscurity was working. Now things get opened up. So solve that problem. The next ones would be trying to chain all of these agents together. But yeah.
I mean, the good news is the technology exists.
Yes.
Right. Agentic agentic exists and agentic works when it is used properly.
Yes.
Also, what you've described is a perfect use of,
Yes.
of an agentic workflow.
Yes.
Right? Before agentic, we talked about onboarding and offboarding.
Yes.
Right? How do I put systems in place to validate the data I'm onboarding?
Yep.
And then how do I put systems in place to validate the response that I'm getting and make sure that the response is appropriate? So onboarding and offboarding.
Yes.
Right? Now we have agentic. So you
Yes.
can actually bake agents into the system
Yep.
that do all of these things.
Yes.
Theoretically.
Yes.
But if you think about the rule system necessary to make that work,
Yep.
that is substantial and significant.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And every organization is different.
Yes.
And if you have 10,000 people, you have 10,000 pieces of context.
Yes.
Right?
100%. Yes.
Like it's very, very seldom that everyone, even inside the same team,
Right.
does exactly the same job.
That's correct.
right?
That's correct.
And so you really need to be able to, like, you almost need an AI, like an SML,
Yes.
that you can train on each individual user to see, has that user had a conversation with that person in that way, to like almost create a 10,000 dimension job description for that
Yes,
person
yes.
that you can then use as attributes to weigh very specifically against every query to see, just because you're on that team, just, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep,
you're a
yep.
member of the finance team and you're a member of the finance team that deals with HR, but you don't deal with this piece, this person deals with this piece. Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's too granular for us to do as humans. Right?
Inside
even
the policy
within
frame.
HR,
Yes,
even
exactly.
within Active Directory, even within
Yes,
those things.
exactly, yes.
And yet it would be painless for an AI to figure out.
That's
right?
correct. That's correct. And
We would just need the AI to not hallucinate when it does
100 when it actually comes up these policies and things. Also, if you want to secure the system, you may have to use AI itself to figure out, okay, is this guy deviating away from what he or she typically does because something has infiltrated into the system, now it's taking permissions or doing things that it shouldn't be doing. Yeah, so this is a whole new space. We often inside our own day-to-day lives, we write code, we try to write code with AI systems and so on and so forth, we augment things. Often I'm worried about how are those systems looking at code, what did they learn from, are they pulling in vulnerabilities that, so it's, like you said, 10,000 dimensions, it's got all sorts of artifacts around it. Is there code coming in, did we vet it, how did we vet it, and so on and so forth. You have to run all of these scanners, is this the right thing for this? What's the trust boundaries of this module? Who evaluated this code? Now you've got tools to run on top of this to find, okay, these are all the trust boundaries. This is where the permission shifts. These are the boundaries. The list goes on and on.
So, I mean, the good news is for anybody watching, like all of this moves in a wave.
Okay. Yeah.
We are so far to the left side of the wave that there's no foam on the crest of the wave.
Yeah.
Right, like we are so early, the water's still dark. If you've ever been to the ocean, right, waves get brighter and brighter and brighter until they peak in white and then they crash, right? We are still where it's not even a swell yet. Yeah. So there is an enormous amount of time in front of us. This isn't going anywhere. This technology isn't going anywhere. It's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to get better, right? So let's not panic, right? Let's not be overwhelmed by the mountain that we just described, and instead recognize that if you just took one step today and came to the base of the mountain and took a picture of it and then went back home, that would be enough for today, right? Just think about what is one step you could take to improve this, knowing you have a lifetime to complete the journey. And by the time you get to the top of that mountain, you're going to notice another mountain behind it, right? So don't get overwhelmed. Just one step at a time. What is one thing I can do to make a positive difference? And the first thing you can do today is take a picture and make a note. Take a picture and describe the problem. That alone would get you started down the right path.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. Yes.
All right, so where can people find you?
Navindra at Theom.ai. Just send an email or I'm on the website. I've got all the channels, but email is the best
Awesome.
for me.
Awesome. Well, this has been another episode of Discover Disruptions in Tech. Please like, subscribe, follow, share, comment, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Thank you.